Welcome to How Do They Afford That, the podcast that peeks into the financial lives of everyday Australians. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm a writer and co-host of the Fear and Greed Business podcast. And as always, I am with Canna Campbell, financial planner, founder of Sugar Mama TV, the financial literacy platform covering YouTube and podcasts and books and Instagram and everywhere. Hello, Canna.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm going well. Sorry, I feel like I almost forgot my own name and then I nearly forgot your name. And it's just like...
You are very busy. You know, your book going. You're now writing a second book. I mean, you got things up in the air.
It's been a big little while, and it hasn't all been good, actually, and that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. We had a cat tragedy a couple of weeks ago, and our cat Huey was hit by a car, and so we have experienced firsthand the decisions that you need to make, particularly in relation to kind of pet insurance and all of this. And I'll tell you a bit more about it in a minute, because it's what I want to talk to you about today: pet insurance and what difference pet insurance can make. Basically, kind of how much it costs, what it covers, who it's suited for, and what types of animals it's suited for. The whole kind of thing, basically, when it comes to pet insurance. So we'll get into it. And I know pet insurance is something that you've spoken about before, and we've kind of touched on it previously, but I really want to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it today. Pet care is expensive, isn't it? I was doing a bit of research, and I saw that the RSPCA said that the average claim amount for cancer treatment for an animal is $3,500 for tick paralysis. It's $1,200 or thereabouts, and diabetes is about $2,000. Snake bites a touch over $2,100. These are not small figures.
No, I'm actually surprised these seem low, because when I talk to friends, you know, about their pets, and I look at my own personal experiences, my bills have actually been bigger than these numbers.
Yeah, and look, that's kind of what we experienced a few weeks ago, and I really don't want to start the show on a bit of a bummer, but it's kind of a good illustration of what we're talking about here, because poor Huey, I can't even say poor old Huey, because he wasn't even that old. He was only kind of 2.5. So he was hit by a car a couple of weeks ago, and he wasn't going to survive it. But in those kind of few hours at the vet, when we were going through kind of everything and discussing kind of, hey, is surgery something that we should be kind of trying, that we should be kind of looking at these options, we were told that even just attempting that surgery was going to be $15,000. Which is just an extraordinary figure. And of course, there was no kind of guarantees. There was a lot of kind of bones broken and things. And so sadly, Huey didn't survive, but it did kind of kickstart the conversation for us about his brother, Stewie, Huey and Stewie, and whether we should be getting pet insurance for Stewie. And it seems like when I was a kid, I don't remember pet insurance ever really being a thing. It feels like it's something that's kind of boomed in recent years, maybe as pets kind of become more like part of the family.
And I think the cost of trying to get your family member, you know, just staying healthy and happy and living a long life that they deserve, you know, we throw money at the problem. So there is always a new product that can be created from that.
Let's go through how it works, because there's probably a few questions in this. Typically, kind of how does your standard pet insurance arrangement work? Is it similar to human health insurance?
Yeah, it's very similar to private health insurance. So it's a monthly premium. There are lots of different policies, lots of different levels of cover. Increases with age. You've got an excess, which varies from policy to policy. And if your pet gets sick or is injured, an insurance company, subject to the claim and the terms and conditions, will help cover a large component, hopefully, of that cost.
Okay. So you mentioned in there's a monthly premium and different levels of cover. Does that mean then that it only covers a certain percentage of the cost up to a capped amount? Because that was something that we kind of saw when we were looking at this and kind of using the figures that we'd been talking about as an example. We kind of realised that even if we had pet insurance, it would have only covered up to X amount.
So this is where you need to look into the fine print of your policy, because some pet insurance companies have no cap. So you could go into, I'm sure at the end of the day, there's got to be some sort of cap, because you can't spend $1 million on,
on an animal.
surgery on an animal. But Some of them had like a $15,000 cap. Some of them had a $30,000 cap. I even found one that had, according to the website, no cap. So it's really important that, you do your research before you take out one of these types of policy. And obviously you need to be aware of obviously what the excess is. So, both my dogs, Peppy and Giuseppe, are both insured, and they both have different excesses because they both have two different policies.
Okay, so let's look at some of the numbers then. If you pay a monthly premium, what kind of figure are we talking about? As you can see, I'm really starting with the basics here because it's been a world that I hadn't gone into, and now we are well and truly deep in it. So what kind of figures are we talking for premiums?
Well, for example, Peppy. So Peppy is she's almost 2, my Red Fox Labrador, and she costs me $83.94 per month.
Okay.
Whereas Giuseppe, who is my favourite family member, and he is a chocolate Labrador who is 10 and a half, and he costs me per month $156.31 per month. Now, their excesses are different. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what they are, but I think they're around the $1,000 mark or $800 mark. But they vary because I've actually got 2 different insurance companies for them.
That's roughly kind of equivalent to a lot of private health insurance for humans. Not in terms of the premiums. Those premiums are lower than a lot of private health insurance policies, but those excesses are fairly similar.
Yeah, excesses are very similar. But, if you think about your private health insurance, like ours is around about $700 per month, and we're a family of 5.
Oh, yeah.
So actually per person, it's quite similar.
Okay.
Depending on the age.
And once again, I've just put out an assumption and you have shot it down.
Shut down.
Yep, and necessarily so. Are there exclusions? I'm assuming that there are kind of things that are not covered under most policies.
Yes, so pre-existing conditions, if you choose to have elective treatment such as desexing, getting an illness during the waiting period, and obviously then treatment of diseases where you should have had your animal or pet vaccinated in the first place. And
really?
Yeah, I had before I had Giuseppe, my chocolate Labrador, I had a previous chocolate Labrador puppy, and I got him with a very bad heart condition, congenital heart failure, and so he was not insurable. So I had to take on that risk. And I mean, sadly, he only lived to 2.5 years of age. But I had to take, there was nothing I could do to get him. I couldn't even get an exclusion for his heart. He was just uninsurable.
Oh, wow.
He was actually going to be destroyed. So I was like, no, I'll take him anyway and give him the best life possible.
For as long as he has. Oh.
This is the financial planner with me. I was taking him to this specialist for his heart to get it monitored, and they said, look, there's the medication. It was something like $500 per month. So to save money, and they said to me, look, get him on this medication. He'll live to age sort of 5 if you're lucky. But so I went and bought in bulk all this heart medication from the US, and then his heart just gave in about 3 months later. So I had all this medication, heart medication, just sitting in a box that never got to be used. Actually, I donated it to a vet.
I was going to say, what do you do with that?
I donated it. I was also a foster home for the Rescue Labrador organisation at the time, so I actually gave it to one of the vets, and they were able to use it for other animals.
I'm glad you put it to good use, because unfortunately, my first thought was, well, you'd flush it down the toilet, wouldn't you?
That's not good for our planet.
I'm aware of this. I'm definitely aware of this.
Killing fish now.
Well, isn't that what you do with goldfish once they go?
It's a bit different to flushing like pills down the toilet.
Okay, all right. Well, I wouldn't know. I
feel like goldfish is kind of biodegradable.
I would imagine so. I imagine they probably would. God, you'd see, if you worked in like a water treatment place, God, you'd see some strange things coming down.
Oh, yeah, not right. Yeah.
Like from kind of...
people just flushing the wrong stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, that's definitely kind of getting off topic. The cost differs, obviously, depending on a bunch of factors. One of those would be breeds, I'm guessing.
Yes. This was really interesting, and I was surprised, but I wasn't. So the most expensive dog to insure is actually bulldogs.
I'm not surprised.
Really? I'd heard that, but I guess they've got lots of breathing problems.
I would assume that the bulldogs and pugs would be in that same kind of category because they all sound like they've got kind of sinus issues. Sleep apnea for dogs.
And then the cheapest breed is actually the little toy dogs like the Chihuahuas and the Maltese dogs and Jack Russells, which I thought was really interesting.
How then, I suppose, and this kind of gets into the back end of it because it would be fascinating to see some of those factors that go into deciding the different levels of cover, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be cool to go into an insurance provider and just have a look at all their data and see different breeds and
which ones would be more expensive? I have to say, my young Labrador Peppy, she is so, like Labradors, particularly Labrador puppies, they stay Labrador puppies for good sort of 3-4 years. They're mental. And I have a red fox one, which is apparently even more mental. Peppy is off the charts. She eats everything. And I'm surprised that Labradors weren't expensive to insure because they're just constantly garbage guts. They'll eat everything and anything. Like Peppy's eaten a COVID test. She's eaten a golf ball. She eats shoes all the time. She gets food off a bench top and eats the plastic wrapping, Play-Doh, like everything. So I'm surprised. It was quite interesting seeing the different breeds and how they all add up.
And don't Labradors have a lot of hip issues?
They do. They have hip dysplasia, and when they're puppies, they have to get checked.
Which is often that would be factored in as one of the risk factors for a Labrador.
Exactly. And Giuseppe is now, he has cortisone injections all the time because his hips are starting to go. So yeah, I mean, big dogs obviously. Big problems.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And maybe that is why then these smaller ones like the Jack Russells and the Maltese don't necessarily have those same kind of joint issues as they get older. Fascinating. Look at us, amateur vets here discussing the various health issues. Look, I want to come back in a second and want to get onto the money side of it in terms of how you can get a good deal, kind of the different options with different providers and kind of maybe where you can trim things that you maybe don't think you're going to need. Is that even something that you can do? You're kind of looking at me with a little bit of a quizzical expression. We'll come back in a second and see if that's justified. All right, Canna, we're talking about pet insurance because it is a big issue. It's an important issue. There are a lot of pet owners in Australia and pets are really part of the family now.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And so I think the old kind of fashioned idea of a pet being an add-on, just another kind of thing is kind of gone. It is a pet as a child now, essentially, in the household. So you can see why pet insurance has boomed and become such an important part, especially when you're dealing with such large sums if anything does go wrong with an animal. So I want to talk to you about kind of how you can do it in a more affordable way. And before the break, I kind of put it out there as to whether or not you can kind of trim things out of a policy when you're looking around for a policy. I'm trying to almost kind of equate it to private health insurance for humans. And whether, like, say, you don't want your optional extras, you don't want your physio, or you don't want your dental. Is that part of it?
Unfortunately, you can't be as selective with pet insurance like you can be with your private health insurance.
Are there pet physios? Actually, I say that.
Whoa,
I say that. And I know that your partner Tom is a horse physio.
He's an equine physio, yes. So, and I don't believe that's covered by pet insurance necessarily, but I'll have to actually ask him. That's an interesting one. But with pet insurance, typically, you can't trim what you don't want.
Yeah, okay.
So, but most pet insurance companies will have 3 different levels of cover. So you have your basic, which is often the cheapest. You have your standard, which is like the mid-range. And then you have your advanced comprehensive cover. And that is typically the most expensive type.
And where's the trade-off between those? I'm assuming it would be in kind of higher premiums for the lower ones, higher excess for the lower ones, but also maybe even a cap on your overall claims?
Yeah, so this is why you need to look at lots of different policies to get a really good feel as to what's right for you. And a great starting place, but not where you necessarily finish, is going through those comparison websites, because then you can see, say, 5 or 6 different insurance companies and the various policies and what the premiums may range and the sort of top line stuff. The only problem I would say with the comparison websites, and I love comparison websites, is they don't necessarily have all of those companies and those insurance companies listed on those websites. And they obviously get, it's an affiliate linked program, so they get money from those insurance companies, whichever one you choose to go ahead with. So bear that in mind. And obviously you keep in mind what the maximum claim is, the different levels of cover, and what's important to you. So for example, and again, this is not product advice, Giuseppe is insured through the RSPCA.
All right.
And for me, I really like that because the first year of premiums help support the RSPCA. But beyond that, it actually doesn't. Even though it kind of a little bit, no, I wouldn't say misleading necessarily, but I thought, I assumed it was through the RSPCA with all the money going to the RSPCA, but only the first year of premiums actually do.
Okay.
Whereas Peppy Truffle, the naughty red fox Labrador, she's insured through Woolworths Pet Insurance. And that then gives me 10% off my grocery bill one time per month.
Did you say Peppy Truffle?
Peppy Truffle, yes.
Hang on, is Truffle a middle name?
Yes.
That is fantastic. Sorry, it felt like you glossed over that too quickly, and we need to just come back and focus very briefly on it.
She's like a truffle pig. She just sniffs stuff out.
Yeah, I was actually doing some research on truffles the other day, and the fact that most the wild pigs have traditionally been the animals to do it, that really dogs have now overtaken pigs as the main truffle hunters.
And they actually use a lot of Labradors, and these Labradors are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Isn't it fascinating?
Particularly in Europe. And they are stolen because they're so valuable, because they're so good at finding truffles.
And do you reckon you could insure the nose in particular? Because you know how often you get that in people who work in, say, wine or perfume, etc. They insure their nose.
Like a hand model.
Exactly, insuring their hands. God, we go to some strange places. Assuming, of course, that it's like all insurances that once you need it, it is too late. Like, say, for instance, when we were at the vet and kind of having conversations about potential surgery, and that's too late, isn't it, to be looking at insurance?
It is. So Giuseppe, my favourite family member, when he was a puppy, before I took insurance out on him, he got meningitis and almost died. $3,500.
Ouch.
And I was talking to the nurse and he said to me, you really need to make sure once he's better from this, take out insurance.
Okay.
So, yes, it's often too late once you're standing in, calling the vet or in the car, driving to the vets to take out insurance. But what some people choose to do is they self-insure.
I was going to ask you about that because we talked briefly about that when it comes to personal health, human health. I feel like I need to keep clarifying between human health insurance and pet health insurance. But we talked about it for humans and the fact that it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do for humans because the costs can just be so phenomenally large. Whereas with pets, there's a reasonable / realistic limit that you'd be looking at for pets usually.
Yeah. You sell your left arm for a human, but you have to put things into
perspective. Yeah, okay, no, I get that. So how do you self-insure? How does that actually work?
So what happens is people tend to set up a separate dedicated savings account and they'll put, say, for example, $100 per month into that account so that should something happen out of the blue, there's, $4,000 or $5,000 set aside to help cover that. Mm-hmm. Now, that is a great idea. However, it has its limitations. So, for example, if I had done that for Giuseppe when he was a puppy, I wouldn't have necessarily had enough time to save up $3,500 because he was still, a 6-month puppy at the time. Yeah. The other thing is dogs, animals, they may not necessarily just have one accident or illness, they'll have multiple. So while Giuseppe's had meningitis, he's had hip problems, he's had stomach problems, he's had very expensive dental work. So, you're kind of assuming that there'll only ever be one illness or one accident. And so that may not necessarily be enough money. And you may have not saved up enough money in time. So you need to then make sure that you've factored that perhaps maybe an extra buffer in your emergency money as well.
All right. Then how do you make that decision over whether you self-insure, whether you pet insurance, whether it's right for you? It is just a case of going through your budget and assessing your priorities as a household, as a family. Yeah.
And I think it's very personal. I know people who are mad dog lovers, but they just don't see the value of pet insurance and they're happy to take that risk. Yeah. Whereas for me, after going through what happened with Giuseppe as a 6-month chocolate Labrador puppy in my arms, I was devastated and I would never question the value of insurance. And, Peppy's already had a couple of claims because Garbage Guts has eaten Christmas decorations that have gotten lodged and needed urgent medical attention. So for me, I don't think twice about it. And they're a family member, and I need to be able to look my animals and my pets in the eye and go, I will do everything I can to make sure you are fit and well again and home with us where you belong.
Yeah.
And also to my kids, it's part and parcel of being a responsible, I hate the term pet owner because of the term owner.
Yeah.
But it's about, having a family member.
Yeah. Yeah. Being a responsible pet household.
Exactly.
There we go. Okay. So look, a bit in all of that, and there's a lot of decisions that you really need to make there and a lot of research really, because this is an environment where once you need it, it is too late to get it. So you need to be kind of proactive in thinking about it. And some of these figures are quite high, and we gave those stats early on from the RSPCA. And you're right, they do probably sound a little bit low. Kind of animal cancer, dog, cat, $3,500 being the average claim amount, or tick paralysis. But I've heard of that going much, much more than $1,200. So we are not dealing with small figures here. And so you're kind of looking at, you've got your monthly premiums, you've got your different levels of cover that increase. The cost will increase with age. You need to look at the excess. And so there's a lot of similarities here between pet insurance and human health insurance. The premiums can kind of be almost roughly.
Well, if you want to go by my Labradors,
well, yeah, based on
monthly,
that,
pet insurance, they're pretty similar to our approaching $700 a month private health insurance for a family of 5. So quite close. In fact, Giuseppe's more expensive.
And you need to do your research on exclusions, like your pre-existing conditions and the various kind of diseases or perhaps that your pet should have been vaccinated for. And just be aware that different animals will be treated differently under it because they all have different health conditions that they are perhaps more prone to. When it comes to then saving some money on it, shop around. It's the standard advice, kind of the standard recommendation for anything is just do your research, shop around, look at comparison websites, assess the maximum claims and the different levels of cover, and also factor into it maybe whether self-insurance is an option for you. And it's not an option for everybody, but it's worth kind of considering in the mix of various things. And hopefully, it'll be one of those things that you never actually need to use.
And that is a good thing.
Indeed it is. All right. How do we find you if we want more information? And where can we find videos of your pets?
All right. So I have a weekly series on my lifestyle Instagram account at Canna Campbell Official. And it's called What Peppy Ate This Week. So...
And no shortage of material by the sounds of it.
If I don't publish this, I get inundated with DMs going, have you published What Peppy Ate this week yet? People literally message me and go, I'm hanging out for what are we in for this week? Because every week she's eaten something so weird and so bizarre. So if you ever want to see my crazy family, in particular Peppy Truffle, you can follow me on Instagram at Canna Campbell Official. Otherwise, if you just want to keep going with my financially inspiring and motivating content, it's Sugar Mama TV on Instagram. And then, of course, Sugar Mama's Fire Play every Monday morning at 5 a.m.
No, I think we all want to see what Peppy has eaten. And I just love the name Peppy Truffle. Yeah, it's a fantastic name. And you can hear me every day with Sean Aylmer on Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business news podcast. Thank you very much for listening to How Do They Afford That? Remember, please hit follow on the podcast so you get the new episode automatically every Wednesday. Leave us a review as well. A 5-star rating is always very much appreciated. Next week, we're talking about a topic that is obviously very kind of close to your heart, but it's something that even I get a lot of questions about. People going kind of, how do I find a good financial planner? Kind of where do I start? And it's because we're doing this podcast that we're starting to get a lot of these kind of questions coming in. Where do I start? Which means clearly the message that we keep repeating, speak to a professional, is getting through. So next week I'll be putting that question to you and we'll try and kind of point people in the right direction. Don't miss it.